On. Yep, thanks, Robert. And I'm going to ask for the cedrant and apologies, please, Julie.
Thanks, Provost, and good morning, members. Provost Jim Todd.
Yeah.
Councillor Stephen Canning.
Present, thanks.
Councillor Ellen Friel. Thank you. I have an apology from Councillor John McFadden. Councillor John McGee.
Yeah.
Councillor Elaine Cowan.
Here.
Councillor Maureen Mackay.
Present, Julie.
Councillor David Richardson.
Present, Julie.
Councillor James Adams. Councillor Lillian Jones.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Ian Linton.
Here.
Councillor Douglas Reid.
Yeah.
Councillor Graham Barton.
Yeah, thanks.
Councillor Graham Boyd.
Here, Julie, thank you.
I have an apology from Councillor Barry Douglas. Councillor Neil Ingram.
Yes, thanks, Julie.
Councillor Peter Maben.
Good morning, present.
Councillor Claire Maitland.
Here.
Councillor Beverly Clark.
Here.
Councillor Sally Cogley.
Here.
Councillor Kevin McGregor.
Thanks, Julie.
Thank you. Councillor Linda Maben.
Here, Julie, thanks.
Deputy Provost Claire Leach.
Here, Julie, cheers.
Councillor William Lennox.
Yeah.
Councillor Alison Simmons.
Here.
Councillor Billy Crawford.
Yeah.
Councillor June Kyle.
Present.
Councillor Jim McMahon.
Yeah, Julie, thanks.
Councillor Neil Watts.
Present, Julie.
Councillor Drew Filson.
Yeah.
I think Councillor Hogg has difficulty trying to join the meeting. I'll just check with IT in the minute. And Councillor Elise Stewart.
Here, Julie, thank you.
Thanks, members.
Thanks, Julie. Just go through some remarks, folks. That's okay. The Ayrshire Fiddle Orchestra at Ayr Town Hall, 22nd of June. It was a summer concert, absolutely brilliant. See the hall packed, and all those young folk performing. They've got a whole raft of gigs coming up, going over to America and such like. So good to them, especially those young folk. Then there was the Silver Pride event at Park Hotel on the 27th of June, and this was Scottish Care. Set the meeting up and invited them along to the Park Hotel. This was Scotland's first ever older adult specific LGBT event. The groups were promoting diversity and inclusion in older adult social care in East Ayrshire. Thoroughly entertained, and we heard some real heartbreaking but inspiring stories of their lives. The Legion here in Kilmarnock, with over 70 members, doing really well, and our own Mark Hunter, who is a petty officer chef in the Royal Navy. They are the best chefs in the armed forces. And Mark made some delicious dishes, and he helped showing all of us veterans how to cook very quickly, and it was some great tips. So everyone had a great time, so well done to Mark and the team. The First Edition Festival Kilmarnock, this is the official opening, the installation of the mural and the commemoration of the First Edition. This was a whole week in the middle of July, and it was great with live music and spoken word. It was great to finally accept the mural from the artist Michael Corr on behalf of the Federation. A wonderful addition at the town centre, and hope it gives a lot of pleasure to folk for years to come. We had a haggis tasting competition, and it was great to see our very own Ian Faulds, the butcher, winning. And I can assure you their haggis really was the best. The wee cafe was open all week with many visitors. The Kilmarnock Picture House guys gave a very informative talk on Burns' connections with Kilmarnock. We had a great chieftain's dinner with poetry and song, and then the annual lovely service dedicated to Burns on Sunday morning at Newley Kirk, and then the wreath laying ceremony at the Burns statue at the Cross. So well done to everybody at the Federation. They're going from strength to strength. A special 100th birthday to Mr. John Mitchell of Galston. John is a very humble, lovely person. He wins the garden competition every year. But John was actually at D-Day, and he always says, Provost, I wasn't at D-Day. I went in on the second day. I said, John, you were at D-Day. So a lovely guy, and he's done really well. A well-kent face in Galston. And it was great that his old regiment appeared, and members of the Legion went up, and the whole street was out to congratulate John. A lovely gentleman. So wish him all the very best. On the 13th of August, we all went along to the closing ceremony of the houses at the top of Brighouse Hill and Treeswood Head Road. They're a mix of 1 to 4 bedroom properties, some with adaptations, and it's great to see the two streets looking lovely in supposed to be summer weather, but it rained all day. So good luck to all the families that have moved in. As you all know, the MND was the charity that we chose, and we managed to raise the great sum of £10,746. A massive thank you to everyone who's volunteered, and a special shout to Jim McMahon, who raised a lot of money with his gigging. Due to the ongoing cost of living crisis and the pressure on many individuals and families, I've decided not to choose a particular charity for the coming year. I know the pressure on many people's disposable income, and I hope you'll support that view. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to ask for declarations of interest before we get into business proper. I think we all know, we all know what we're doing. And I'm going to ask Julie for item 2, pages 3 to 8, and that's the previous minutes. I move as a correct record.
I control this.
Are there any questions? Okay, thank you. Item 3 is the 6 monthly update on Cabinet activity, pages 9 to 18, and we'll bring in the leader.
Thanks, Provost. I'll just go through this quite briefly. Just right at the start, we mentioned just the pressures that we face this year in terms of the budget. You know, as we continued to discuss, you know, all through every kind of activity that we've got these days, it's you know, one of the most difficult situations, you know, certainly in my time in local government. And what we say here and is that we managed to establish this £40 million fund, which was agreed over the next 10 years, which will support early intervention and measures to tackle poverty, inequality, and support communities through these difficult times. However, we had a great event at Centre Stage recently, and it was well attended by members right across the board and members of the community, and it was great to hear some of the ideas and that were put together. So there's a number of things to action there, and we're currently carrying a number of service reviews just to keep East Ayrshire in the best position we can, and we're probably one of the best placed local authorities right across Scotland to face the difficult times that are ahead for us all collectively. And we managed to achieve a balanced budget without touching our reserves and help close the 9.7 million budget gap that's mentioned there. So we did that. We managed to do a number of things, and hopefully we have updates through Cabinet and if necessary, governance and scrutiny to look at some of the things we had introduced, and that included the half-price school meals for another year, additional funding for roads and pavements. I've not seen the programme yet, but I'll try and get that issued as soon as. I know members have been asking for me. Extend the work of the Civic Pride team. I know they've been busy, and I think we can see some of the results, but there's still an awful lot of work to be done right across our communities. And extended the work of the financial inclusion team. And I think, as we said later on in the report, there's almost £3 million worth of financial help to financial gains, as I think we call it, to help people in the poorest section of the community to deal with the ongoing cost of living crisis. So we also managed to support the corporate enforcement team, extend the clothing grant, which would certainly be welcome last week as we had another new another school term, and maintained the guard maintenance collection fee. I'd like to thank my appreciation right to all 31 members, and particularly one group, for helping us through in these difficult times and that we're facing. And there's plenty of work that is to be done through COSLA, and we're looking to see a wee bit light in the tunnel, but it doesn't seem to be emerging so far, but we continue to live in hope. Flooding and the NPF4, Again, there's a number of our areas and tracts of land that are where land's been blighted because of some of the decisions that SEPA are applying to some of the flooding, flood risk. We need to, these are affecting particular town centres right across East Ayrshire, including Kilmarnock, but right across other towns as well. And it's important that we get the best use of our land, including brownfield land. And for that reason, we really need to keep engaging with government ministers and with SEPA itself. And I have recently been writing to them, and I know Chief Executive has been engaging with them as well with that aim. One of the things that we're also proud of is continuing our commitment to training and apprenticeships, and there we see in the Ayrshire Roads Alliance that we're trying to grow our own workforce, as we're trying to do in care as well, where there are significant shortfalls. We have jobs, but we just need properly trained individuals, and we need to try and see where we can get from employment pathways and school leavers to get people in these much needed jobs. So the Ayrshire Roads Alliance road worker training scheme has been very successful, and a number of our young people and older people have managed to engage and get qualifications to support us in that part of the business. Corporate procurement strategy. This just really shows you just what a big organisation East Ayrshire is in terms of our spend and how we can help the local community, and how community wealth building is really, really important. £58 million was directly awarded to Ayrshire-based businesses from our £180 million spend, and 62% went directly to East Ayrshire. Now, the trajectory is going up in terms of the amount of spend that we're spending locally, and we do continue to, through economic development, to engage with businesses and with procurement, to engage with local businesses to see where we can help them and get them on a pathway, which helps us not just to procure their services or goods or whatever to East Ayrshire, but it helps them in the procurement track for other authorities and other public sector agencies. So we know that that's been particularly successful at the moment. Property management plan progress report. I mean, that's basically our commitment to component renewal and help to improve the condition of our existing assets with £2 million spend, just considerable amount of money to spend, but to make sure that our assets are kept in the best quality that they can, and we're not leaving problems set up for the future if you don't invest and don't maintain your stock and your vehicles, etc., and your buildings. You give yourselves problems to the future. So with that commitment, we're able to help with less spending in newer products and make the best of the existing facilities and plant material, the machinery that we've got just now. Other issues, the pavement parking, well, that's to be quite honest, it's obviously been a difficult proposal, and it's had a mixed reception, but the intention behind it is to make our streets more accessible for people, and people that with walking and disabilities, and the problems we know with parked cars and pavements can restrict these movements. But we know some of the practicalities of that, and some streets are not easy, particularly in some of our historic streets. But we're trying to find solutions round about that. In terms of levelling up funding, we make specific reference here to Belfield Interchange. This is something that I've certainly spoke with ministers, and I know it right across the whole East Ayrshire and indeed Ayrshire. We know what a restriction the Belfield Interchange is, and it is becoming more of a hazard in terms of more cars queuing to get on the interchange, particularly coming down in the busy times, coming down from the north. But not only that, if we improve that, it allows us to build more houses in some of the areas to the east and south of the Kilmarnock, where we've had significant growth, and particularly Ballochmyle and Irvine Valley, where that hasn't experienced the same growth. If we can deliver a Belfield interchange, it gets growth right across East Ayrshire, right across Ayrshire, and we're trying to engage our friends in South and North Ayrshire to get behind this lobby because so often we see for Transport Scotland, the South West Scotland is very much not high on our priority list, but it's up to us to engage with our parliamentarians in Edinburgh and London to just hopefully they'll drive the cause for the need that we have for the Belfield interchange at every opportunity. My voice is going, so I'll just try and kind of restrict the next few points, but I think some of the highlights has been that I've seen this. I'm going on a tour soon to Moorfield in terms of the 5G Innovations Regions funding. I know this has been a big incentive for businesses to move into the new Moorfield industrial space, and it's very unique, and it's a useful way of attracting new businesses with this new technology. I know that there's been examples also in the Halo as well, and that supports businesses elsewhere in Ayrshire to become competitive right across the global market. In terms of the capital investment, we continue to invest in mainly our schools. I think there's £100 million we say later on in schools. Doing Academy, recently completed Dunlop Early Childhood Centre. It's been to see that. Wow, it's one of the nicest nurseries. I mean, if there's a prettiest nursery in Scotland award, I think I'll be nominating Dunlop Nursery. It really is some place for our young people to learn and get a foot in education. But we see progress in St Sophia's, Kilmore's Primary, and Stewart Academy, and also the Galston office. And as we spoke recently, the Galway Centre, our commitment to the Galway Centre for the £14 million of investment is still on the table, and we're trying to get the best value for money to get good leisure facilities in our main town for Kilmarnock, which supports people right. It's now becoming the biggest leisure centre in Ayrshire. And hopefully in terms of the ice offer, as we see other ice facilities closing, and what's a premier Olympic sport for not just Scotland but for the UK, is that we hope to host national events here in Kilmarnock, and that should be more investment. That makes that even more possible. Anti-poverty and inequalities. We've established 17 community larders right across East Ayrshire, but what we're trying to establish now is a Food Larder Forum, and I've attended that recently. And we've also trying to bring learning and bring all the supermarkets together so that we become more efficient in distributing food and getting to all parts of East Ayrshire, and that nowhere's left behind. And it's not just the localities that have the food larders that benefit, because there are poor people right across East Ayrshire that need our help. And to that end, the Cabinet agreed that would, as I say in paragraph 49 there, a further 200,000 to ensure the continuation of some of these anti-poverty and inequality projects. And in these difficult times, that's good news indeed. And as I said earlier, we've also spent an additional £50,000 in financial inclusion officers, and that's, as we said earlier, 2.9. I don't know why this hasn't rounded up to 3 million, but it's a big lot of money that's getting into the pockets of local families, and particularly people that are really struggling at the moment. In terms of the BSL sign language, and if my voice goes anymore, I think I'll probably have to use it. But it's seriously the fact that we've given this amount of money to, which is to connect with quite a sizable community that we have that have hearing difficulties. I'm pleased to see that this is our second engagement event, and we've led it from East Ayrshire and encouraged others in North and South Ayrshire to participate as well. But it's certainly an initiative that came from here, and I'm proud that we have supported it. Just other quick things to mention is just pleased to see that early years funding places we've been able to ensure that fair access to funded places 2 and 3 year olds are made right across East Ayrshire, and unlike other authorities, it's not a service that it's variable or one that you have to queue for, but we're guaranteeing that right across East Ayrshire. We had another Children and Young People's Cabinet in March, and as we see here, there was a concentration in young people's mental health and well-being, road safety and skill for life. And as we see some of the shocking statistics in terms of mental health. This is more valuable than ever, and it's right for young people to bring this to our attention, and it's only right that we follow these issues that they've brought up. I mentioned earlier the investment of £100 million to our learning estate management plan, and we try our best to do what we can there and continue the investment that we've had over the recent decades to make sure that our young people have the best education and start to life that we can. On the last page, folks, so basically we're really delighted. I was delighted to hear Councillor Hogg brought it to my attention last week that Dalrymple's been included in the new national park in Galloway, and I'm glad to see that that's joined other wee parts of the Doon Valley and been part of the new national park in the south and west of Scotland, and that's good news for the village there. I'm trying to smile when I'm saying the next one. The electrical vehicle charging has been introduced right across there, East Ayrshire, which I'm sure all people that are driving electrical cars, whether they're working or not, are available right across the district. And that, of course, in terms of we can recover some of the costs of energy, and we're not necessarily subsidising at this point, but we'll encourage people all the same to look at other ways of using electrical vehicles to deal with some of the issues in carbon release and the energy problems that we've got. Again, the Kilmarnock parking tariff review's been we've rolled that out. There have been some teething issues, and other members in Kilmarnock and beyond will be aware, and I've raised some of them already that it's been brought to me for the business community, and that's something that we'll look at and to see if there's anything we can do, because I mean the main objective is the financial prosperity of the town centre, and to make sure that we've got a vibrant town centre, that businesses are thriving and people are able to access the facilities we want to. So we'll do everything that we can, and we know that if we need to adapt some of the policies, we will, to make it the best experience that we can, and we recognise that. Finally, glad to see the East Ayrshire Cycling Initiative being rolled out again. Again, that's another way of dealing with CO2 emissions and get the council on the green agenda. A lot in there, folks, and sorry I've taken so long, but there's some of the paragraphs there, you can have spoke all day about it, and particularly in terms of the financial situation. Well, we face a dire situation globally and nationally. I think we're best placed to face that situation, and we're a better place than most local authorities. And I'd like to thank all 31 members for their support in this and dealing with that. And I'd like to thank the officers collectively, because I know that you've been working really hard right across all your departments to try and see where we can make reductions and get efficiencies and still carry out the much needed services right across East Ayrshire. And I know really times are difficult, but with their support, and we can get through these times. And thank you, Provost.
Thanks, Leader. I'm going to open it out. Before all those folks online, please, could you make sure you're on mute? Because we're hearing some coughing, which is fine. And I'm going to open it out for questions. And Councillor Linton.
Thanks, Provost, and thanks, Dougie. It's a remarkable amount of work going on in East Ayrshire right across the piece. Can I draw members' attention to page 13, paragraph 39, in particular reference to the Galleon? I know that May's cabinet meeting we agreed to re-establish the working group that would begin the process of the refurbishment of the Galleon. I'm really disappointed to have to say that today that the initial meeting hasn't taken place. That's us almost into September, and it was drawn into sharp focus at the recent board meeting at the Galleon, where the heavy rain at the weekend caused ingress into the plant room, causing £25,000 worth of damage to electrical plant. Now, I know I'd asked at the time that we give priority to getting the roof fixed. It's going to be part of the refurbishment, and can I take this opportunity to restate that request that the working group begins the process at the earliest opportunity. Thanks, Provost.
Thank you. Before I bring in Councillor Mackay, Richard.
Thanks, Provost. Good morning, members. Thanks, Councillor Linton. Just to confirm that I've spoken to the design team. That meeting will be scheduled for the next couple of weeks. I'll attend that meeting along with colleagues and other interested parties, and we'll move that forward. The majority of the spend's profiled for next financial year, but we recognise the challenges, Councillor Linton, and we'll take that forward as soon as possible.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks, Ian. Councillor Mackay.
Thanks very much, Provost and Leader. Thank you. And I certainly would agree with you. East Ayrshire is better placed than many places. And I think you're quite correct. And I keep saying this in multiple forums. It is because when push comes to shove, we actually always manage to put the people of East Ayrshire first in terms of the decisions that we collectively make. And I think as recently as this week, I've had some other comments from other colleagues across Scotland about, my goodness, how on earth have you managed to have that £40 million set aside for some strategic planning? And that is because we have collectively chosen to do that, and we have chosen not to take that to plug budget holes that we have, and that has only been able to be done because we have put the people of East Ayrshire in the longer term first, all of the way through. So that is the way that we operate. My questions, very specific, really focus around, I think, largely the roads portfolio. And that is just to ask for some detail in terms of actual numbers of the Ayrshire Roads Alliance Road Worker Training Scheme, to just get a sense of just quite how well that one's working. Also, to look again at just what progress we're actually making on the parking enforcement. I think that one's perhaps not making just as much traction as we would have expected at that stage. And again, Leader, thank you that you're going to get us to come forward with what the actual detail of the asset management plan investment programme is. And if we could also have a sense of just, I know we have invested more money at the budget, and it was just to get a sense of what the percentage increase of that would be. I think that's quite important that we just keep an eye on that. And then also, it is really important that we keep our eye in terms of what's happening on flooding. And I think just writing again to Scottish Government and SEPA is something that's important. We've got our new head of planning in place, which I know will mean that there's different views, more perhaps innovative ways of thinking about how we actually deal with SEPA. So I'm very interested in that. And then the one that we always come back to, and I think Councillor Linton as well, I know on the Economic Forum does exactly the same as myself, and that is we never miss the opportunity to talk about Belfield and what Belfield actually has as the opportunity, not just for us, but for Ayrshire as a whole. And I think that's really important that we keep coming forward with that so that it never goes off anybody's agenda. Thank you, Leader.
There's some of the details that I don't have. Maybe Richard can, in terms of that, I'd be quite interested to hear myself, just many road workers we've had through the scheme, and just some of the progress that we've made in terms of planning enforcement. Just if you can have an update, I know that. Okay, and in terms of the other issues, in terms of flooding, I think this is something we need to look at collectively, and whether we invite the minister down, that's something and I know that Eddie's been having discussions with SEPA, and just to see it might be important to just engage with them as as we continue to do. But I think there's we need to put the pressure on in terms of Belfield interchange, and that's something we need to do right across both the parliaments if we can, and just get involved with an all-party campaign. It's something that I would be happy to sign up to. But Richard, if you want to comment.
Thanks, Provost. Thanks, Leader. Certainly in terms of the apprenticeships, I had the pleasure of meeting the first cohort of 12 that were engaged with ARA a number of weeks ago. I don't have the exact detail of the rest of the numbers, Councillor Mackay, but I will get that and circulate that to members. Certainly people I spoke to are incredibly enthusiastic and certainly being developed as part of the team. In terms of the pavement parking enforcement, again, the feedback I had was that the study is now well advanced, and again, I will speak to Jane and make sure members get a more detailed and thorough update in terms of when we're proposing to bring that before members. And I guess aligned with that, and through you, Provost, the matters in relation to temporary parking restrictions and traffic management is something that I'm engaged with colleagues within ARA in detail at the moment. It's my intention to circulate a members briefing next week, giving members updates in relation to those matters, and we'll include the pavement parking in that as part of that process.
The other issue is flooding that Maureen raised there, and I think with Pamela Clifford coming back to us from Western Bartonshire, we know that there's been considerable success in Western Bartonshire along River City and along Vale Leaving and Dumbarton in terms of an area that's equally affected by flooding as we have, and maybe can use that experience back within East Ayrshire, and we welcome to hear our new head's thoughts on some of the flooding issues as well, and if that could be support us in some ways.
Thank you very much, Provost. Thank you, and Richard, thank you for the detail. We'll look forward to receiving that. It also just raises for me again, I had the opportunity with something that we were doing for council this week to be affected by our new increases in parking charges and actually engaging with our parking enforcement staff. Again, there are significant issues around still remaining in terms of football parking associated with that. I think that's something that we need to look at some more. Equally, I think these are the people who are our absolute eyes and ears on the issues of parking locally. And I think we really are missing a trick that we are not actually directly engaging with them when we are looking at how we're reforming parking charges within the town. They are our eyes and ears. They see exactly what's happening. And I think we would do well if we were directly engaging with them when we were considering what parking changes and charges we were actually bringing in. So I'm actually making a request to ensure that when we review that, that's something that's happening directly with those staff members, please.
Thanks, Provost. Thanks, Councillor Mackay. Absolutely, I would expect that we would be engaged with our colleagues and frontline staff that are indeed engaging with the community as part of that role and responsibility. So we'll pick that up. Specific to the Rugby Park scenario, again, as I say, I'll detail what I'm about to say in much more detail as part of the presentation, the members briefing next week. So there's two elements to it, as members are aware, and following your approval in terms of the temporary parking restrictions, which they were implemented on the 10th of April. There's been a number of games, specifically the game on the 15th of May versus Celtic, where we've undertook a snapshot of the situation in terms of the impact of those TTROs. In general, we reflected that those TTROs have been well observed, so to speak. However, there was some challenges and in a limited number of streets where traffic flows were in effect reduced to one-way give and go type arrangements. So we're looking at that situation, but in general terms, considering how we'll potentially look at more permanent arrangements and in those places where it has worked and it's worked well. The other element is the traffic management that was raised by members at council during the same discussions. We've been exploring two potential options in this regard in terms of traffic management arrangements. One option is for us to manage that through, again, TRO and provision of physical measures such as signs and barriers. We'll need to discuss that with Rugby Park colleagues. They have already introduced implementation in terms of holding some of their traffic at their car parks to help the dispersal of fans after the game. The other option, and the one that we're looking to explore because we feel we'll be able to, it will be a more practical solution, is to engage with Police Scotland to manage this through their match day arrangements with the club. There's a meeting arranged between myself, police and colleagues on Monday of next week. And that's really the reason why I'm suggesting members that following that meeting, I'll provide a detailed members briefing and cover all of this at that time.
Okay, thanks, folks. Councillor McGee.
Well, thanks, Provost. Really, just a couple of questions for the leader. There is a lot in that report, and some of them more important than others. I've just got a couple of questions. The leader mentioned the Civic Pride team, and just an aside, there was a nice presentation the other day about the Palace. Councillor McMahon pointed out to me about the nice drawing in the front page and all the urban goals fleeing above it. And I was just wondering, I still see a lot of emails going on about urban goals, and I ken well we've no statutory duty regarding that. Folk tend to phone the council for anything. And I think if we don't ken the size of the problem, like if we've maybe had 20 nesting pairs 20 years ago, can we know find out what the size of the problem is and use some of our Civic Pride team or our apprentices to maybe actually count the goals and see where we are for 20 years ago and how many nesting pairs there is. The other question was, just as I was coming out my driveway this morning, I seen the sign that I've got in my fence, Grumpy Killie fan. So I was hoping that demeanour will change tonight about 9 o'clock. But the leader mentioned the £40 million fund, and we were all at this round table event at the centre stage the other day. And while there were some great speeches, me being kind of grumpy and a bit pessimistic about stuff like this, what were the outcomes? And what I'm looking for the leader is an assurance that one Thursday night we're not going to get an email in saying that's the cabinet papers here. And in that cabinet paper there'll be a big paper of what's happening with the £40 million. And as elected members, I don't think we've had any input whatsoever into what's happening with the £40 million and how it's going to be spent. And I think we should have input, and I didn't see us getting great input at the round table thing. I thought it was a round table thing where we were going to be discussing and maybe coming up with ideas of what we were going to do. I didn't see any of that, and that's maybe just my perception. That other folk might well have seen it differently. But I'm looking for some assurance as that the elected members in this room today will have some input into what's going to be happening, and it's not going to be a fait accompli on a Thursday night. The decision's getting made the following Wednesday. Thank you.
Well, I'll ask David to talk about the goals, and then I'll hand over to the leader.
Just to confirm, Provost, to members that there is a paper will be coming to Council in December that will draw together and try and set out in a fully comprehensive way all the different aspects of the goal issue, problem, call it what you will, and setting out the strategy for dealing with that going forward, which will build on the previous approach, but also increase the messaging to the public of what can and can't be done. It will set out the legal provisions around the protection of wildlife, for they are deemed wildlife by law. rather than any of the other epithets people might want to attribute to the gulls. The bottom line is there used to be some ability at the nesting point to deal with some of them, some species, but the law's been tightened up, and although folk don't want to hear it, the gulls are protected around the time they're nesting. So by the time they're on somebody's roof protecting their young or protecting their eggs, it's too late. So that report will set out what the council can and can't do in terms of enforcing littering, because you don't need a new criminal offence. It's an offence to put food waste or any litter on the ground, and that's what attracts the gulls, is the food waste that people still put on the ground and throw away and encourage the gulls. If there was no food supply, I think every member would accept there would be a lot less gulls, whether we count them or not. So the report will set out the legal provisions around the protection of the species. It will set out what the council can and can't do. And one of the things the council can't do is spend public money proofing privately owned buildings, but it will set out information about when that can be done, which is before the nesting season. And it will highlight what our communities and our public can do to assist the council's efforts to try and at least mitigate the impact of the gulls. And the two main parts of that message will be stop throwing food waste where it's available and accessible to the gulls, and to proof your buildings if you've had problems in the past, because they tend to return to the same places. So that paper will come to council in December. We've hijacked or booked a slot at the councillor conversation the week before. We would hope to be able to present the draft paper, have the conversation with members, and if there's any further desire or appetite to go further than what we set out in the strategy paper, which is still in development, then members can make that known both at the informal session and at council. I'm no expert. I'm not sure whether counting the gulls is going to assist. They're not hard to find at the nesting stage in terms of when complaints arise. But as I said, we need to get into a more proactive or preventative approach and encourage the public to do the same in order to address it. If we wait till the gulls are on the roofs protecting their young and acting as they are by nature going to act, as many creatures do, it's too late. So there is a paper coming. It will set out the cans and the can'ts, the do's and the don'ts. It will set out the message to the public, and it will have a messaging and media campaign around about it, because January to February is the time that people want to start looking at proofing their buildings. So that's the headlines. Within that, we will consider and set out a position on any kind of count or number of them. The one thing we won't be mentioning in that paper is any suggestion of a cull, because they don't tend to go down too well. But again, we can have that conversation at the councillor session in December, and the paper can reflect any further asks, and then council can decide if it wants to go any further than what's proposed. But what's proposed will be to take us to the full extent of the powers that we have and the ability to spend public money fixing a problem that's of wider effect than just the council and the council-owned properties. Thanks, Provost.
Right, no, that's excellent.
Thanks, Provost. Just first of all, take the easy. It's not particularly easy, but it's the gull issue first. I know this has been discussed at Kilmarnock Steering Group and the Kilmarnock Board, in terms of some of the bins in the town are nothing more than feeding stations for the gulls. They can access them dead easily. And I know there's been a move to try and fund seagull-proof bins, but there's obviously... and I know that we've established these in some other towns nearby, and that's something that they're wanting to look at, particularly for our town centres. And there's also difficulties with them because some of there's disability issues is involved with some of these types of bins as well. But we're working with our partners, because it's a horrendous problem, John. You're right to highlight it, particularly for people living in and around the town centres. It's where they're getting their food supply. And there's an overall issue with vermin as well, and the horrendous sight the other day walking down King Street where a seagull was tucking into a pigeon. It's just absolutely horrendous, and I took a picture of it because it was absolutely, that's right, it's right in the middle of the town centre. So I mean, that's just it's not something that attracts other kind of vermin. So we have got a problem, but just probably no different for any other towns, but we've just got to make sure that we prepare for it. And I think the suggestion of seagull-proof bins and doing some of the things you're suggesting, David, in terms of educating people now to throw away their rubbish and how they deal with their rubbish, including some of the commercial premises that I know that you've been dealing with in terms of enforcement action as well. So there's a wide range of methods of dealing with this issue, but it is an issue.
And the second part,
Second part, in terms of the 40 million, nobody's got the monopoly ideas here. Certainly, what I hear from everybody, all the, right across the chamber, right across the communities, and what I hear from, and we know that officers are working hard on this too, and we'll bring that back in some ways just to make sure, when we decide that, what we're doing with the 40 million, we're best informed as we can to do that and make the best decisions and make that 40 million work the best for us. But that's, that's down to talk to other people and listen to other people. David, sorry, I was after.
Sorry, probably I should have covered that. The report that's coming to council in December is a joint report from myself in relation to the Environmental Health Service input and from Blair in relation to the wider community's input. It will also address the intent and aspiration around a bin replacement programme, recognising the cost of that and building the cost in. It'll also set out, we did previously have an arrangement. We are one of the few councils that actually take actions in relation to the gulls, but you wouldn't know it. But we did actually have a contractor in place previously, but part of his effectiveness was at a time when, before the laws tightened up, and he was able to take some actions, so we could actually in the past deploy him to lawfully remove some nests or eggs, etc., within the law, but they're now all protected, so that bit of it's gone, and all we're left with is the ability to fly the hawks to disperse them, which is useful around some of our waste management facilities, but of little lasting effect in the general communities. So that contract's coming to its natural end. That was previously funded by the approval of Cabinet with £25,000 allocated from the HRA to support that general contract. That money will come back. It's not a saving to governance, it goes back to the HRA, and I think the intention is to at least use that to at least prime fund or whatever the potential to replace the bins. Clearly that's part of a wider programme and will also potentially be impacted by the motion that's still to be considered today. But the report will set out all of these aspects and what the council proposes to do, while fairly and equally setting out the council's ask. And in discussing this with colleagues, I'm advised by Blair that, and I take your point, Leader, and I would stress your point, that all communities are affected by these. I think it's a question of promoting understanding of what can and can't be done and what everyone can do to address the problem. It doesn't seem to necessarily have the impact it has here in other parts of the country. Blair advises me there's a place somewhere up in St Andrews or whatever where the toasty shack, and if you pay an extra £1, you get insurance. So if the gulls steal your toasty, you get a free replacement for your £1. The point being that those businesses suffer the same issues and they accommodate and the people accommodate. But here there seems to be a greater appetite for the council to do things, which is why I think it's important we set out what we can and can't do in order to manage expectations. And we'll do that in the paper and we'll bring it to members before that council meeting so we can have that wider discussion and make sure we've captured everything and addressed all the issues. Thanks, Provost.
thank you, John. Yep, sure.
Sorry, Provost, I didn't quite catch what Dougie said at the end regarding the 40 million. Just on the point of the urban goals, I think the point, and I kind of going about it, counting the goals, the idea behind counting the goals was if you had 20 nesting pairs 20 years ago and you've got 4,000 nesting pairs now, it shows you the size of the problem. That's not an answer, I understand that, but that's the only reason I bring that up. Thank you.
Thanks, John. In terms of the mark, in terms of £40 million, my door's always open. I know Joe's door's always open, but we need to. It's important to get the best solutions. We've got to engage with as many folk we can, and that's right across the chamber. And that we need to have, discussions right all the way through this process. And I haven't firmed up in terms of what we're doing in terms of seminars, but engagement with all the members, all 32 members, and the public out there and all our community groups and all the officers is really important to get the best value for that we can for that £40 million, and that means engaging with everybody through Eddie. And I don't know if Eddie wants to.
Thanks, Provost Leader. The purpose of the event at centre stage was actually to help us to make informed decisions, you know, and that was why we brought in some of the experts across the country about what could actually help us make the right decisions. And it was also about, you know, the community planning partners were with us because we cannot do everything. And there has to be, so there was a good number of our very senior health colleagues with us, you know, our police colleagues were with us, and a range of other people from communities were with us. So we and you as councillors have taken that decision to set aside the money, which means we've set really tight budgets for our services, and it's tight for us what we're doing. But we have at least light at the end of the tunnel in terms of innovation and different things we can do. But we do need to make sure, in the light of Christie, that if we're spending money and money's been saved somewhere else, that actually we're going to get some of that back. And that's the very frank discussions that we need to have with people. We've set aside as a council a bit of money, but some of the, you know, like the impact of that might be somebody else. And we need to start getting agreements with other people that they either invest alongside us or they help us make it sustainable. And that was part of what we're doing there. There are a few things that are around for us that I think are more straightforward, you know, that we would maybe want to look at. So things like, I think, you know, there's unanimity in this chamber around jail poverty and things like that. So there are a few things like that that we can maybe do and evidence that will make a difference. There are other things that we might want to work with a range of partners to do. But again, when we are in tight times, prevaricating too long is not right. So it's actually a conversation we've just had, you know, as CMT, we need to come back to yourselves and actually say, right, we've heard all this. So in the first 3 years, because that was what we said we would do, how would we spend money in the first 3 years, testing out what's actually going on with that money and actually stop things that are not working, that are not making a difference, or, you know, like boost up things that we see that are making a difference. So you're absolutely right, Councillor McGee. We do need to engage, not just at the formal committee level, but at seminar type level with people in terms of listening to folk, and absolute commitment to do that.
Right, thanks, folks. Councillor Jones.
Thank you very much, Provost. It's really just to give some reassurance to the leader and to everyone in the chamber that as your new member of Parliament for Kilmarnock and Loudon, I will be working very, very closely with the council, and I certainly will be lobbying hard for investment for Belfield interchange. I recognise that's really important and it's really vital. And you know, Scotland's strategic traffic network, about the Ayrshire growth deal. It's hugely important, and it's certainly something that I will be lobbying hard for with colleagues in Westminster. And you know, and when the time comes, when I do leave the council, I want to give reassurance that I'll be working very closely with council. And I do know that we have scheduled meetings in the diary with the Chief Executive, and that will continue. And really just, I hope my working relationship with the leader and everyone else continues, because at the end of the day, we are all working on behalf of the people of Kilmarnock and Loudon and East Ayrshire. So I just wanted to give that reassurance as a Member of Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Boyd.
Thanks, Provost. Just a couple of points in the discussion. First one, parking. It is causing a bit of consternation. Some of the new parking charges in Kilmarnock, I'm picking that up for businesses. One particular business is focused in that, saying they're losing a lot of money. I understand the need for charges on a Saturday morning. I fully agree with that, but we need to look at the charges, because we talk about people going off to Silverburn, but we actually forget there's a bigger, no, maybe not so much bigger, there's another competitor right on our doorstep called Irvine. Irvine's a 15-minute drive, and Irvine's up to a game in the last 10 years. And just for luck, their mall is next to the retail part, so there's loads of free parking there. And I know a lot of people are no shopping in Kilmarnock and can down to Irvine now. And Irvine's getting significant money for the growth deal to do up the harbour area, so it's going to become an even bigger competitor. So we need to be careful here. I think we really need to look at these parking charges again. Flooding, I noticed the Safeway site's been tidied up. That's really good. I know there's not much we can do there. We need to remember as well, the chair of the Kilmarnock Business Association, I think, is still on the board of SEPA. That's a good contact. And finally, just what the leader said, and Councillor Jones, Belfield, I agree 100%. We've just got to push as hard as we can. The roundabout is a nightmare. It really needs upgraded. So hopefully all 32 is support everything we can do to improve the Belfield interchange.
Thanks. In terms of the parking charges, the regime, yeah, these things can be refined, and I too was getting different messages from different businesses, and and these vary for some businesses that just want to see the town centre parking for their workers and no one else. To people that are really want to increase the footfall and want to their business is dependent on the length of time people are staying. So we need to refine that just to make sure we can try and keep everybody happy, because you'll never keep everybody happy. But we need to keep the footfall up, make sure businesses are well connected. And can I say maybe one of the things, I visited 3 brand new businesses yesterday in the Love Local campaign, and there were 3 businesses that have just recently set up, and I can tell you that 2 of them have. At least 2 of them, because it was have came from other parts of Ayrshire, including Irvine, to set up their business in Kilmarnock, because they were attracted to the fact it was a historic town, and that had that had its attraction. So I wouldn't get too despondent, Graham. I know you're a great Kilmarnock lover, the same as me, but there's some folk that just sees, and that's the difficulty that we have that Irvine doesn't. Irvine was set up and designed in the 60s and 70s. With vehicles in mind, and to quite an extent, I would argue too much with vehicles in mind and forgetting about the pedestrian as we have. But there's a lot of new businesses out there that are coming and enjoying the experience of our town, and part of its attraction is the historic core to the town, and that's something we've got to really look after.
Thank you. Councillor Adams.
Thank you. Councillor McGee rightly mentions the traffic issues at Rugby Park, and by and large the residents I've spoken to don't mind the traffic restrictions. What they mind is a lack of enforcement, and it's the same as a litter in the town centre. There doesn't appear to be much in the way of enforcement. I asked over a week ago how many people had been fined for dropping litter in Kilmarnock. I'm still waiting on an answer, but we need to enforce what we're suggesting. So, for example, I'm in receipt of an email, as is a council leader, from Ara. They have no volunteers on Sunday for the Kilmarnock Hibs game. So what do we do about parking if there's nobody to manage it? That's a problem we need to address as a local authority. We need to enforce.
Councillor Maitland.
Just a few points on what we've been discussing. Parking in town, shopping habits, driving habits change continuously. So we should be continually monitoring those habits and how we pay for them and how it impacts on residents. Obviously, I had to get that one in. When it comes to the seagulls, if you were in my house at 4 o'clock in the morning and there was a pack of angry dogs outside all fighting and barking, something would be done about it. But this happens continuously with the seagulls and nothing happens at all. Going back to the parking thing again, it's always about the residents that are around Rugby Park, and most of these residents have driveways, and I realise it will be annoying, but they live by a football pitch. And what's happening now is that they're being displaced back, the cars are being displaced back to the streets, like my street that doesn't have driveways and has flats, so lots of people that need those spaces for cars. So we should be continuously monitoring. There is no magic wand, and we do find that you get displaced from the more salubrious Rugby Park back to the areas that are full of flats and no parking areas. So just we live in the town too. Thank you.
August, in relation to Councillor Adams' point, there's been various correspondence from different members at different times. I wasn't aware anything was outstanding. I'm aware Councillor Adams has said information recently, as have some of his constituents, around enforcement policy. I would urge members not to conflate different issues. the enforcement of the goals and the enforcement of the litter legislation, for that is what it is, as I said earlier, is a matter for the Corporate Enforcement Unit, for which there's 4 permanent members. Council kindly gave us additional funding for 2. We've been out twice to recruit. We've been able to recruit 1 more on the temporary basis, so there are currently 5, and we are working as best as we can with the resources we have to enforce all of the legislation that sits with the Council's Environmental Health Authority and therefore the Environmental Health Service, which is littering, fly tipping and everything else. I would absolutely urge members and members of the public not to conflate enforcement of one piece of legislation in respect to littering with enforcement of the parking regime. Secondly, taking Councillor Maitland's point, if you have different legislation, you'll get different outcomes. So you made the point about if the pack of dogs was barking outside at 4 in the morning, something would be done. Yes, it would. It'd be done under different legislation. There are many different circumstances there, and not least the fact that the dogs are own pets, so somebody would be responsible for them. Gulls are wildlife, nobody's responsible for them. So different circumstances, different legislation would produce different outcomes. And again, I wouldn't conflate the two. The Council does, and the Corporate Enforcement Unit and the Service do work within the powers that they have to apply the 4 E's in terms of enforcement, of which issuing penalties is the last step, as members know. We've had this conversation within the service many times, and there is a balance to be struck, but simply issuing tickets is not always a solution. But I'm also quite clear that members and members of the public don't accept that and don't see it that way, and I continue to engage with the manager and the team to see what more we can do in order to manage and meet expectations. But I think the recurring theme here, that there's a lack of enforcement around the girls, given everything I've said in the paper that's coming to Council, is inaccurate in itself. And I also think it's unhelpful for anyone to be conflating how the Council's dealing with the girls issue with how the Council's dealing with traffic at Rugby Park or anything else. And I would offer that, members, in order to try and keep you focused. In terms of the FPNs, if there's any outstanding correspondence or information required, I'll check that with Elaine, and Councillor Adams will have any outstanding response before the end of the day, and certainly before the end of the week, depending how voluminous the request was. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, folks, thank you. Councillor Richards.
Thanks, Provost. Just on the parking in the town centre, I can understand it is a bit of an irritation sometimes, pay for parking when you've not got pound coins, etc. in your wallet, and then you've got to go down the telephone route and use your bank card and all that. But I think there's another aspect to it. I think retailers in the town have got to note that the bigger irritation for me isn't actually paying for the parking. It was back in the days where you drove down into the town because you were going for a haircut or something like that, and you had to actually drive to 3 or 4 different car parks and go round in circles trying to find a space because there weren't any spaces. But I think we've done a really good job recently. We've got the new car park in London Road beside the old academy. My favourite car park now is the new car park in behind the Salvation Army. You can always get a space in there. So the aspect to the council traffic management and parking, etc., I think we've done a really good job because you can drive down into the town centre now and be pretty certain you're going to get a space. And that was the bigger irritation for me, lack of spaces. So retailers have got to note that I've started actually. I was one of these folk that just went to the town places where you could drive to Asda and Queen's Drive or Morrison's or whatever, and I never really kind of went into the town centre because trying to find a parking space was a huge bugbear for me. But I've actually found myself over the last probably 6 months using the town centre retailers a lot more because parking's available, even though you have to pay for it.
That's great. Thanks, folks. Any further comments, questions for the leader? Leader.
Thanks. Just obviously in terms of the parking issues, it's something we're continuously monitoring and trying to refine it. And there's some issues that you've raised, and you're right, David. There's more and more as we see. There's more and more parking opportunities. And I went past the demolition round about Grange Street. Was happening. The JCBs were out this morning, Grange Street, and great to see that progress of more parking where the old post office used to be on Grange Street. So that'll help that part of the town. But I was just maybe a wee bit remiss, and I'd like to thank Councillor Jones, or that'll be Lillian Jones MP, for our desire to help us through with some of the strategic issues that we need, and it was just to congratulate Lillian and also Elaine on their, because I think that's the first time we've met, on their role as MPs for the two constituencies in East Ayrshire, and look forward to working for the people of East Ayrshire collectively and helping out as well as we can, and just like to thank them for the contribution.
Oh, thanks, folks. I think that's been a good discussion. We're going to move on to the next item, which is the Cabinet and Committee minutes. Leader.
Second that, Provost.
Thank you very much, folks. We'll open it out for questions. Councillor Canning.
Thanks, Provost. Can I draw your attention to page 36 of the report, which is the minutes of the Governance and Scrutiny Committee from 23rd of May. We had the annual derelict and dangerous buildings report presented at that meeting. Well, it's not yet included in that report. Many of you may know that the Institute building at the heart of Stuart Town Centre on Avenue Square is in a very sorry state of disrepair, has been for a while now. Myself and fellow ANIC members and increasingly the wider student community are becoming increasingly concerned about the significant negative impact, particularly because of its position within the town, of this building, and also the safety concerns. We've had tiles and various things falling off recently. To be fair, the owner has responded to requests to do various things to remedy that. Mindful that this building is in private ownership, can I ask the Deputy Chief Executive to meet with ANIC members, relevant portfolio holders and senior officers, relevant senior officers, to discuss how we might simply help facilitate, because that's really all we've got powers to do, to help facilitate the owner and other interested parties to find a resolution to this matter for the benefit of the student community. Thanks.
Richard, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Provost. Thanks, Councillor Canning. I'm certainly aware through the good offices of David's team that there's been action in regard to concerns around the derelict and dangerous building questions that have come into us. Also acknowledge that there's been various colleagues involved in this with this building over a number of years, and I'm happy to take forward the request in terms of facilitating discussions with the owner, other interested parties, and of course engaging with all local members as well.
Yeah, thanks for that. Thanks.
Leader.
Just a wee question, just when I see it here on page 37 in terms of the tree preservation order at Howard Park. Whilst it's been good to see the new tennis and paddle courts in the Howard Park, just wondered, there was trees that were felled there, and I think some of them were TPOs. It's just and I know it's not been the season for planting, but I'm looking for a wee bit of reassurance that that's going to take place in the probably over the autumn period, and that there will be appropriate replacement of the trees that were felled and action taken with, if there's been any improper reduction of a tree with a TPO in it.
Through you, Provost. Thank you, Leader. Yes, indeed, as part of the process following the felling of those trees, there will be replacements put in place at the right time for the season to be placed. So I give you that absolute assurance that that's the case. Indeed, in terms of the wider matters with the contractor who carried that out, my understanding is that we are commencing action against that contractor to recover costs. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mackay.
Very much. It is with reference to the Health and Social Care Partnership minutes of the 20th of March. There makes reference to the fact that there may be overspends in the lead partnership responsibilities in South and North Ayrshire. My understanding is that that has actually happened, and that we are then having to look forward how we actually address that and deal with it. It also makes reference to the fact that we may have to use IGB reserves. My understanding is that that has also happened as well. So it's really just to create the opportunity, Provost, for the director of the partnership to give us an update on exactly the significant pressures that the IGB is actually under, because it has such an impact on many, many residents in East Ayrshire.
Too many microphones, sorry. So yeah, we'd obviously taken an update on the financial position of the IGB to the IGB yesterday afternoon, which included an update as at month 4, and also a recovery plan, because at the point of taking a month 2 report to the IGB in June, identifying the scale of the likely overspends, there was a request from the IGB to pull together and produce a financial recovery plan and bring it back to the next meeting, which, as I say, was yesterday. So that recovery plan was produced and discussed at length and in detail yesterday at the IGB, and it was agreed to then go forward and be implemented. That is really challenging. So I think at this point in time, we're forecasting in the region of a £10 million overspend within the IGB across the services. The majority of that sits within what you would class as council delivered services, particularly around about social care, both for older adult services and for learning disability mental health services, with other overspends across, or minor overspends in some of the other areas as well. The recovery plan sits across all of those service areas in terms of the actions that will be required to bring that back into financial balance. I think the expectation would be we want to share that, absolutely share it with the council and the health board in terms of the specific actions that were taken in there. Given it was agreed yesterday at IGB, we need to find a way to do that in terms of through Joe, perhaps in East Ayrshire Performance, and recognising the challenges that will be reported on to Cabinet in due course. How do we then find a way to bring the recovery plan in its full detail back on to council members as well, so they do understand the implications round about it. There are some significant pieces of work in there in relation to eligibility criteria, etc., that have all previously been discussed. I know Eric's been to a few of the political groups just to try and outline some of the particular challenges that will bring and the implications and the consequences of those actions. The recovery plan clearly goes beyond just that single action, and some of the other specifics will be of interest to members as well. So again, through the opportunities with councillor conversations, etc., we're hoping there'll be some opportunity in the coming weeks and months to have some detailed conversations with our members round about the specifics in there, so all the elected members can understand what we're planning to do, and if there's any particular questions and challenges round about that, I'm happy to discuss them in due course.
Thanks for that. Councillor Boyd.
Thanks again, Provost. Just following on for Councillor Cannon, it's the page 36, governance and scrutiny again, derelict and dangerous buildings. He mentions the one in Stewart, and there's also, we've got the cinema in Titchfield Street. Just if there's any update in that of what we can do. It's in a awful state. It's like a tropical rainforest recently, where the birdlight growing out it. It's looking pretty dangerous, and Titchfield Street is quite a thriving independent shopping area. It's got a lot of nice wee businesses going, and the buildings are complete and utter blight on it. I know the owner had plans for a food market and Crazy Golf, but these never seem to come to fruition. So just, is there anything we can do about the old cinema? I know it's privately owned, it's no easy, but to me, I'm an amateur in terms of that buildings, but it looks pretty dangerous to me.
Chair, through you, just remind members we did produce previously for members' benefit as well as local MPs and MSPs in response to frequently asked questions, setting out all the powers available to the council in terms of dangerous buildings and derelict buildings. So unfortunately, the legal and statutory position is the council is a creature of statute. We can only act within our statutory powers, and there is a minimum threshold, if you like, before unfortunately they are triggered in relation to abandoned buildings. So dangerous buildings, we have powers to act. Derelict buildings, we we have certain powers to act. If they're simply unsightly, etc., then up to a point we may be able to act. In relation to the former ABC cinema, all members are aware it has had a protracted history. The building is generally maintained to a point that sees off dangerous and derelict powers being used. When it falls below those thresholds and we engage with the owner, he does the minimum that would be required and would be fallen within a notice for us to carry out if he didn't do it. Recently there was an approach from the local MSP, who also has it in his sites on a regular basis, and that prompted a further visit because we go out regularly and the enforcement officer went out. The view was, as you've described, given the vegetation, etc., on the outside of the building, the overall appearance of the building, that there may well be scope to apply a wasteland notice. However, as always with effective enforcement, rather than proceed to straight issue the notice, because the notice requires the owner to carry out the works anyway, and the owner, if he doesn't, then creates a default where we can carry the works and seek to reimburse the cost. So if you go straight to a notice and don't engage with the owner, you incur the risk of going the long way round if you have a willing owner. And while this chap has perhaps dragged his feet from time to time, and I'm conscious we're in open session, but it's been all over the standard on many occasions, so I think it's in the public domain, he does carry out the minimum works required, which removes the need for the council to do it and seek to recover the costs. So the outcome was there was a recent engagement based on the current state of the building, and the last I was advised, the owner had agreed to undertake the further works required to bring it back within the minimum required. We would obviously like all owners of vacant buildings to do more than the minimum, but where's the incentive to invest in empty buildings that aren't turning a dollar for those owners? And I'm not condoning that, but that's the factual situation that you're met with. So the ABC is one that's always in our sights. We are out there regularly. We engage with the owner. It's regrettable that while he's had a number of aspirations and ambitions to bring that back to life, which have also been paraded by him or presented by him across the front page of the papers, nothing has actually happened in practice to bring them into fruition or see them realised. The council's happy to work with them, but what the council can't do is take on ownership of every problem building in East Ayrshire, or take on ownership of the problems that come with the problem buildings. We have to continue to work in partnership with owners where there are owners, and we are continuing to do that. But if someone has no business plan, no great funding, no deliverable plans for a building, it becomes a case of continue to stir the pot and get them maintained to an acceptable standard, and certainly a standard that wouldn't trigger us invoking any of our statutory powers. So I'll get an update. There was another councillor that asked about this week, so there's an update coming in terms of the outcome of that engagement, and when the further works to the building that he's indicated he'll undertake will be carried out if they haven't already, and we'll share that with the local members and the members that have asked, or I can put it in a minute for the benefit of all members.
Okay. Leader.
Thanks. No, I mean, it's important that we don't lose sight of the issues round about the former cinema, and as Councillor Boyd quite rightly says, we've got a thriving small businesses round about there, and there's quite a few new cafes and shops that have sprung up in Titchfield Street recently, and that's been really encouraging. But you know, and perhaps what's really disappointing here is I know that the owner's got another interest in another retail premises, you know, just 100 yards away. So, you know, you'd think that it would be in his own interest to actually get something done about this, and maybe come to the table with some serious proposals that we can help with. Because I know down through the decades, and as decades now, that we've dealt with this owner, there's been nothing realistic that's really came forward. And I would just hope, you know, that we keep the pressure on where we can. I had to phone our enforcement team because it was like the bill was lying open, and God help us if some poor soul was looking for refuge in that, what would be a dangerous place. But as usual, it was fast to act and secure the premises. But as an issue that we've got to keep an eye on, Graham, and I know it is quite a focus, particularly when we've got so many new businesses round about there that are opening, and it is becoming quite a wee thriving community of its own down there. So we need to just keep the pressure on where we can.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson.
Thanks, Provost. I know we're flitting backwards and forwards on different issues, but I would quite like to return to the IJB if I can, just because I was a bit late putting my hand up. Obviously, the IJB provides, you know, vital frontline services And it was mentioned, this is maybe a question for Joe, but it was mentioned that there's a £10 million overspend currently on council, on mainly council commission services. Now, if East Ayrshire Council over the next couple of years was asked to underwrite that overspend, first question to Joe is, given our current financial situation as a council, is there any way we could potentially do that? I know that the IJB are about to instigate reviews of how they provide services, etc. But that would be my first question. If we were asked to underwrite overspends of 10 million over the next couple of years, is there any way potentially that East Ayrshire Council would be in a position to do that? Secondly, if we're unable to do that, it may well be a situation that the IJB then can only provide statutory services rather than everything they do. And I think, you know, we're all aware of what that would actually mean in these chambers. That would be some position to be in. So that's my question.
Thanks, Provost Councillor Hutchison. I suppose it's helpful then to go back and set out the actual governance arrangements, you know, around all this. So the IJB is set up through an integration scheme between ourselves and the Health Board, where we agree to delegate certain services to the IJB as a separate public body that's a commissioning body. Alongside that, we delegate an amount of money to that separate commissioning body. So the IJB can only buy services to the extent of the money that we delegate over to them. The IJB then can only buy services from the Health Board and the Council. So it goes there and then they commission back to us. When they commission back as a delivery model, that's why Craig is a Director of Health and Social Care. He's a Director of the Council and he's a Director of the Health Board in that model. So there are two separate bodies going on here. We conflate them into one. There is a commissioning body as a separate public body that's the IJB, and then there's a joint delivery body that's a delivery body of the Council and the Health Board that's the Health and Social Care Partnership. So it's actually that delivery body of the Council and the Health Board that actually overspends. The IJB cannot overspend, you know, because it can only commission so much in terms of that. And although I know it sits in that kind of almost complicated way, you know, like any overspend within the social care part of the Health and Social Care Partnership is actually no different from an overspend in any of other big services. We just need to manage that. And therefore, that's why, you know, in the integration scheme, it says if there's going to be an overspend, you know, a recovery plan has to be developed and brought back. And you're absolutely right. It then means the council can only, you know, deliver services with the amount of money that's there. East Ayrshire Performance will come to Cabinet, you know, like next week. And it will be published, you know, either later today or tomorrow in respect of that. And that will set out the overall financial position of the council. And it will set out that there requires to be recovery plans in terms of Health and Social Care Partnership, our education services and across Richard's portfolio as well. So there are significant pressures in terms of what we will be able to do. But there's also opportunities in terms of innovation about how we do that. And we will look at how we can do that. But there is no illusion here about the things that we can do are going to be restricted. And, you know, that's what we've been trying to, you know, to be honest, to put across, you know, to members for a considerable time. Yes, there will be hard decisions in the Health and Social Care Partnership. There will be equally hard decisions in terms of our education service and across our other services too. It's why, you know, some of the things in terms of we're going to see the waste review, obviously later on, we need to do things differently in terms of order to continue to deliver the best public services we can in East Ayrshire. Joe, I don't know whether you want to say anything overall about the budget position and it will come in full next week.
And through you, Provost, yeah, that would be helpful. And we're still compiling those reports, and they will lodge today. It's why members this morning have spoken about that collegiate approach to working together for the benefit of the communities.
That's been particularly helpful, both in setting budgets without reserves and also in setting aside significant funds for that change. We can call it any word you want, change, transformation, whatever. What it means is it's a different way of working, because certainly with the financial envelope that we have as a council, we cannot maintain the status quo of services. And it's that service provision shown by the waste review today, but moreover in recovery plans that you'll see in due course and within 4 weeks, that change is happening. The £40 million is intrinsic to that, as is the Innovation Fund. And you'll see a report next week that will be after East Ayrshire Reforms that will show and demonstrate to you the approach taken by services to affect that change and to do things differently. By spending money today, they will make savings in tomorrow. And then that's really, really important about providing you with that assurance around sustainability. So I can explain far more next week. I've been to some groups this week. I've planned to go to other groups on Monday in advance of East Ayrshire Reforms on Wednesday, but it will be a different look. East Ayrshire Reforms, it tells a different story, but wrapped around all that, there's an acceptance that the world has changed, and we can wait for it to change back. I'm not sure it's going to change back anytime sooner to the extent we'd want it to, but certainly what we'll focus on is the proactive work that you have led, and through CMT and officers here to make sure that the council, as it goes forward, is financially sustainable. All right, thanks, folks. I think that's been a good discussion. I'm going to move on to item 5, which is the request from the Labour Group for membership changes on various committees. And there's an addition, Julie.
That's Provost, yes. An additional request, please, and that's for Councillor Douglas to replace Councillor Jones on the Community Planning Partnership Board, if that could be included for approval. Thank you.
Thanks very much. We okay, folks? Thank you. On to item 6, and this is a review of the Cleaner Communities Waste Management Service provision, pages 55 to 104. I'm going to start this debate because I feel maybe there'll be an opportunity through the debate for a recess. So we're going to start now and ask Blair to open this paper. Blair.
Thank you, Provost, and good morning, members. Members, the paper before you today is the result of almost 18 months preparation by officers. This report aims to present the outcome of what is a comprehensive review of cleaner communities to create a more efficient and financially viable waste management service for the council, for our residents, and indeed it incorporates the request by council in February 2023. The recommendations, all of which are interdependent in achieving the financial outcomes within Appendix 1, are outlined within Section 2 of this report, and I would like to return to these at the end of my presentation. Members, the background to the report is set out between paragraphs 3 and 17, and this section gives a detailed chronological account of the decisions made by Council over the past 12 years, and it also demonstrates the challenging journey that the service has been on. In particular, I would like to highlight at paragraph 16 the Cabinet decision of November 2022, whereby Cabinet agreed to acquire Garlath and Southhook, which was a view to improve the Council's strategic position in terms of its current and future waste contracts. And you will see significant financial savings that this makes to the Council in our financial projections, which are noted later within the report. The chronology, members, takes us to the meeting, like I've referred, February 23, when Council approved £20,000 to undertake a full review of all aspects of brown bin, charging frameworks and our wider recycling policy. In paragraphs 18 to 20, this gives the context of the service and its operations, namely its function around waste collection as the Council's waste authority and the responsibility to encourage and process recycling materials. This section outlines the staffing and budgetary resource. Members, you will note that this is a large and significantly frontline service, one that is in every town, village and rural location in East Ayrshire on a daily basis. It has a £13.5 million revenue budget, and within that, almost a £4 million per annum income target. And I would commend my colleagues for the role that they carry out every day. This section also begins, members, to introduce some of the challenges facing the service, including those significant budget pressures, addressing which is clearly a key outcome that we've sought to achieve through this review. Paragraph 21 outlines some of the elements of our waste service developments, which are a result of the decisions taken by Council in the period. And I would particularly highlight for members the successful introduction of our new recycling system to communal flats, of which we've been able to attract external investment to allow this to proceed, with phase 2 planned for later this year, which means, members, that when complete, every flatted property in East Ayrshire will have a way to recycle, and the way in which the service has engaged with our young people and their future is ensuring that strong message about recycling is taken home through the school bag as well. We recognise the need to improve and create the conditions for all of our households to be able to recycle in East Ayrshire and engage in our programmes, and it's very clear, members, that through this process it will allow us to do that. In terms of challenges faced by the service, it's important to highlight to members that while the service is making good progress on some aspects of its function, it continues to experience significant challenges, many out with the Council's control or influence, and have set out in detail across 33 paragraphs in the report, from paragraphs 22 to 56, and I would like to pick up in just some of those, members. For example, at paragraphs 23, I have referenced the requirements in relation to persistent organic pollutant substances, or POPs, set out at paragraph 25. These were introduced at very short notice in October of last year, with no government funding to support our compliance, and we have calculated that the cost to the Council this financial year would be circa £276,000. At paragraphs 27 to 30, I set out details in regard to the deposit return scheme, which is a new law introduced by the Scottish Government to reduce litter and encourage recycling. And while we will all be able to continue to recycle these items at home, what we won't get then is the deposit proposed, which is at 20 pence at this moment in time. And that's for drinks cans, sold in clear plastic bottles and cans, but there are exceptions, members. Things such as milk containers, shower gel bottles, etc. aren't included within the current scheme. We have, members, analysis of what impact this may have on the service should it come into place in October, and we would project that this would cost the Council a loss of income of about £330,000 per year. Moving on to contractual and market changes, the service clearly operates in a volatile sector in terms of waste disposal contracts, which are set out in paragraphs 10 to 35. Not only is the service subject to volatile markets for disposal contracts, but also in the sale of recyclate and those commodities, which again I've set out in paragraphs 37. The service sells a range of our recycling commodities collected through the domestic recycling and indeed our household waste recycling centres. And as a result, the service has a significant income target, which I referenced earlier. There are post-pandemic legacy challenges, members, that I've described at paragraphs 38, and again in which result in additional resource, time, and essentially money to deliver the service based on our current model. At paragraphs 39 to 43, I provide detailed analysis on the challenges in respect of recruitment and retention of staff, noting that it is a continuous challenge for us. And from paragraphs 44 to 49, I again demonstrate the detailed analysis undertaken to understand the financial impacts of staffing cover and sickness absence. You'll note that we can continue to experience significant operational and financial impacts because of the cost of absence within our collections alone, and I've set that out at paragraphs 44. And you will note that last financial year, the cost of absence to our service was £329,000. You will also note, members, that we have contractual arrangements in place with our employees who operate on public holidays, and we've been able to go into the detail and demonstrate that the cost of that contractual arrangement, which is not currently within the budget, costs us £419,000 per year to cover. Members, all of those factors, and again many others, and I would like to highlight the potential effect and recommendation that we move back from HVO to diesel for our fleet within the waste service, noting again within the report the significant cost that we've experienced as a council and changing that, and given the volatility of the market in HVO. All of these factors jeopardise the financial stability of the service and indeed its operations. So each of the above within this section collectively challenge the operations of Cleaner Communities. Therefore, to fully realise the benefit of Council's ask on the 23rd of February 2023, which was to undertake the review as I'd set out, I believed it was prudent to extend this to a comprehensive review of the waste service. Elected members have been appraised via extensive consultation with myself and colleagues, and again I would like to thank everyone for their interest, questions, challenge and input. So what we did through this review is we looked to extend the look and we were able to secure £40,000 working with Zero Waste Scotland, who are one of Scotland's leading not-for-profit environmental organisations, and again funded by the Scottish Government. In addition, the brief sought to review our operational model in light of the forthcoming legislative changes and introduction of the deposit return scheme to ensure that the delivery models that we looked to have approved today is fit for the future and again is aligned to our medium-term financial strategy. At paragraph 56, members, I highlight again the leveraging of additional funding to the sum of £40,000, which coupled with the previously approved £20,000 by Council has enabled us to undertake this robust and comprehensive review. This did involve, members, us commissioning Eunomia, who are an expert in the waste field, to undertake a review of our collections model, to identify and assess alternative models and recommend one which would enable the Council to best navigate the complex and fiscally challenging landscape that's existed for a number of years. But members, as always, with an eye to the future. A copy of Eunomia's very technical findings can be found in the background papers, members, and they're on the members' portal. So moving forward to the scope of the review from paragraphs 57 to 61, members, Eunomia's collection options appraisal sought to assist the Council in understanding the impact of adapting for those upcoming policy changes, as I set out earlier in the report, and of alternative approaches to delivering collection services, but importantly, with a view to reducing costs to the Council. The purpose of the options appraisal was to assess alternative ways of delivering curbside collection services and to provide cost, operational and performance information for each of the alternate collections options. A number of changes to service design and external factors were also considered, and they're set out at paragraph 61. Members, to note, all of the proposals that we looked forward did include the future impact of DRS, as that must be anticipated in any scenario modelling or service delivery. We also looked at the recycling collection of plastic films, which is also due to come into effect. We looked at collecting paper and cards separately within the current recycling collection system. We looked at changing the recycling system from the current multi-stream to two-stream collections and collecting paper and cards separately from plastics, metals and cartons. But we also looked at the different vehicle types for recycling, such as 70-30 split backs, 50-50 split backs, the RCVs that we have as just now. And we clearly had to look at the frequency of which we collected our waste. So members, from paragraphs 62 to 70, I outline the considerations that formed the basis of Eunomia's review, including the modelling, collection options that aligned to the Household Recycling Charter and Code of Practice, the resident experience, i.e. the range of materials collected, the frequency of collection and the type of containers used, and indeed the type of collection vehicles used. But importantly, members, we looked to capture the carbon modelling, which assessed the environmental impacts due to all of these different changes that we're proposing. Members, there were a number of differing collections models considered by Eunomia alongside officers, and you'll be familiar with figure 1 at paragraph 72 of the report, having seen this previously as part of our engagement sessions with you. And for these members, I will explain that we compared 7 collection models against our current model. Clearly, again, members, to reiterate, this was enhanced to include the future impact of DRS. And we looked at across a mix of 3- and 4-week collections, trolleys, boxes, wheeled bins, and again, a number of different ways in which we can collect waste through the vehicles that are available to us. Again, against each model was the consideration of the cost, ease of maintenance, and the environmental impacts. Members, Eunomia produced a robust and highly technical report detailing their findings, which I've tried to distill within paragraphs 73 to 80, again with full findings within the background paper. I would highlight particularly figure 2 at paragraph 81, which really shows the detail of each option side by side in terms of their performance for cost, carbon savings and recycling rates. The next section of the report, members, our vision for the future, highlights the recommendations from Eunomia's findings, which are supported by officers, of option 4C. And that is set out within paragraphs 84 and 85. This would see our collection model moving to a 4-weekly wheeled bin service, and which will realise a number of key benefits, which I've outlined at paragraph 87. This model will support a more streamlined service, reducing the size of our workforce required, and in which we would expect to see a proportionate reduction in absence levels. In this model, we would see a net reduction of 27 posts at grade B and C within our workforce, although this would not be fully realised until the full implementation is achieved. Members, you will note the significant anticipated expenditure reduction of circa £1.7 million per year on full implementation, if you're minded to agree all of the recommendations before you today. Members, it's hugely important for me to acknowledge the time taken by our trade union colleagues and frontline colleagues who have been in regular dialogue with us throughout the past 18 months in bringing this paper and its recommendations forward. At paragraph 88, the report continues to describe the business case for the Council's investment in cleaner communities to support this transition to the new model through the implementation of a significant change programme, including investment in new fleet and enhanced capital infrastructure. Further, members, the report recommends the establishment of an implementation board at paragraph 90, which will comprise of relevant senior officers, finance, people and culture, and trade union representation to oversee the progress of this change. It will oversee and drive the significant redesign and all associated projects, including the communication with local residents, which will be of paramount importance to us as we move forward. As detailed throughout, members, this type of review is significant, and to enable the transition of the models to the proposed provision, there is a need for additional transitional staff to support this seamless move, and associated costs for this work is set out within paragraphs 93 and indeed within the accompanying table. This proposed change will require investment in one-off infrastructure to ensure that our operations meet the necessary SEPA and the Animal, Plant and Health Agency compliance within our new model. And again, the associated costs are set out in the table at paragraph 101. Members, the waste function of the Council is an area where we have to invest strategically in our workforce to keep pace with the legislative, policy, financial and operational complexities. The service, as outlined in the beginning of the report, has continuously sought to develop and innovate. However, the sector has continuously moved, with greater expectations placed on the Council. Therefore, to ensure that it can cope and succeed into the future, this report has set out the business case for investment in a number of key functions, but also recognising the recent change detailed at paragraph 103 at strategic lead level and an anticipated redesign of the Housing and Communities portfolio. Current recommendations, therefore, members, have prioritised those operational posts to allow me some more time to get this right in terms of a structure for now and into the future. The detail is set out at paragraphs 102 to 120, with the full impact of posts found within the financial projections at Appendix 1. Members, the collections model is only one aspect of the waste management function of cleaner communities, and there are other operational aspects of the service that can support our waste management function well into the future, creating a more efficient and sustainable service for East Ayrshire's residents. The following functions and services have been reviewed alongside the collections model and respond directly to the ask of Council in February 2023. Members, at paragraphs 122, you will note that Eunomia reviewed our current garden waste permit scheme. The review identified that, as we have not increased the charge for the scheme since its inception, that the Council is incurring a loss from its delivery, and they are recommending that the service covers its costs. As the report sets out at paragraphs 125 to 128, this means recommending that the charge increase to £40 annually, initially, for the next financial year, and their approach is recommended that we track the Scottish median on an annual basis thereafter. You will see the positive impacts of such a decision that are set out within Appendix 1 and indeed the projections over our 10-year financial projections. Paragraphs 129 to 137 analyse our bulky waste and special uplift service. This is a service which Eunomia assessed as significantly subsidised. Given the extent of budget pressures within the service, the substantial rise in disposal costs, coupled with the introduction of POPs, the recommendations as outlined within the report are in order to recover our costs, to increase the charge for uplifts to £39.80 per uplift for non-POP containing materials, and in doing so, increase from a maximum of 3 items to 5, and we will look to introduce a separate charge for items that contain POPs, and there is as illustrated within Table 4 at paragraphs 136. Members, it's important to highlight that the Council would prefer to support the reuse of items and therefore will promote local charities and furniture recycling organisations as part of our bulky waste booking process. We recognise that material is not designated as a POP until it enters our waste stream. Therefore, it's deemed safe for reuse so long as the materials are still intact. This approach will not only be beneficial to the resident disposing, but to people who would benefit from the reusable items and the diversion from waste benefits for our environment. Within this, and in responding to comments from members as part of our engagement with you all, officers are also recommending that a 50% reduction be maintained for any household who may be in receipt of housing benefit or universal credit. Members, moving to paragraphs 138, this provides the costs to services, and you will note that within the year 2022, we had to replace 9,000 units at a cost of £300,000 to the Council, all of which was did not have a budget. To recover the cost and encourage better care of containers, it's been recommended that a replacement charge of £39.70 per residual bin is established and that the charge tracks the Scottish median moving forward. Officers again are recommending that there is no charge applied to recycling bins to continue to encourage all members of our community to recycle. And in recommending the implementation of this charge, members, again, we would look to introduce a cost reduction of 50% for those households who may be in receipt of housing benefit or universal credit. Members, at paragraphs 153 to 157, the report sets out the rationale and proposals to make better use of the commercial opportunities our waste service can offer by introducing a commercial disposal service at Garlath and Southhook, creating a new option for local commercial customers. This requires us to adjust our charging capability to reflect the increased disposal costs as set out within the paper, and the recommendation is therefore to increase our own charges by 20% to ensure that we are both commercially viable and competitive within the market. As referenced within the report, the acquisitions of Garlath and Southhook have placed the Council in a strong position, as had been hoped, to get the best available market rates for current and future waste disposal contracts. The costs for our new contracts are front-loaded in year 1 and year 2 in the amount of £3.08 million. But over the 10 years, this translates to a reduction in cost of over £6 million in comparison to the Council's previous contracts. Members, this is set out in paragraphs 165 to 167, and I'll turn in more detail as I discuss the financial implications later. In terms of implications, members, these are set out from paragraphs 168 onwards, and then within these, I would highlight for members the human resources implications from paragraphs 171 to 177, and would say it's important to recognise that while there will be a reduction overall in the workforce, it is intended to achieve this through natural turnover, and we will support the transition to ensure that the affected workforce have every opportunity available to them in regards to jobs and training, and to look for suitable alternative posts that may exist within the Council, and planning for this will commence immediately. Members, the financial implications are laid out in paragraphs 179 to 186, and while the outcome of this comprehensive review represents a significant investment, both in capital and revenue, it will yield a more efficient and cost-effective waste service that will return efficiencies to the Council, which are set out in detail at Appendix 1. The table at paragraphs 182 details the required investment level and the one-off and recurring savings this will allow us as a council to achieve. And at paragraphs 183, the report details that the financial resources to support this will be via a series of temporary short-term draws of £10.12 million from the Capital Fund, with repayment from year 3 and beyond. This is made possible because the planned utilisation from the fund to support the Council's overall capital programme is such that there is sufficient headroom to enable the waste service to be implemented. In the event repayment to the capital fund from the future waste efficiencies are not realised or are not realised at the expected value or date, the report seeks approval for the Chief Finance Officer and I to identify what options there are available to recover the position while safeguarding the capital fund. The chart at paragraphs 184 and again the detailed analysis at Appendix 1 shows the 10-year financial projection, noting that we are using recommended assistance from uncommitted general fund balances to enable implementation in years 1 and 2. Members, in conclusion, and as I stated at the outset of my presentation, this report represents the outcome of a robust and comprehensive review, again with interdependent recommendations that I believe will take cleaner communities and the Council in terms of its Waste Management Authority responsibilities onto a more secure and sustainable footing. Members, your decision today is one of £10 million of capital investment to take us from the current £2 million overspend position, which increases in year 1 and 2, to achieving a recurring £1.7 million in annual savings. This new model allows the service to recover its costs and to take a strong position in terms of growing our commercial focus using our strategic assets. It will further improve our recycling while continuing to work towards our climate change ambitions by creating a further substantial reduction in our carbon emissions. Through this review and subject to your approval, members, we will significantly transform one of the Council's largest frontline services, and on that basis I would turn you to the recommendations I set out at paragraph 2. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Blair. A massive amount of work with a 10-year plan. Members, will open it out for discussion, questions, etc. Councillor McMahon.
Thank you, Provost. Can I start at the outset by thanking Blair and his team for probably one of the biggest and hardest comprehensive reviews I think that's taken place in my time here. It certainly has been comprehensive. I think when we set out that £20,000 at the budget to take a look at this, it would only have scratched the surface, and thankfully for the team in the application to Zero Waste Scotland, that additional 40 allowed us to bring in and have a full look at this. It has been comprehensive, massive implications for the Council, but I think as we look forward and as part of the discussions we've heard with Craig, Joe and Eddie round about the difficulty in delivering statutory services and the particular overspends that we're going to have to look at, this sits really, really well and looking towards the future of what we're going to deliver in savings. Not upfront cost, as long as it can deliver the £6 million worth of savings over that 10-year, are well worth it, in my opinion. POPs has been a significant addition to where we would have traditionally looked at how we disposed of our waste. I think it's really important that as we go forward with this, that the comms are particularly upfront and right, so the public know why we're doing this. And particularly in about, we don't want any POPs wee cushions in our normal bins as they go forward, and the implications that would carry forward. Taking a look and unanimously, I think 4C was the option. The implications run about the workforce particularly, but I'm glad to hear that the unions have been well informed and are content with that, because I think it's vital that we can carry that forward with the recommendations of the unions.
You touched on absence. It's massive, and it is a massive implication as far as the budget goes. And I think with the new team that's proposed to be put in place, that should hopefully bring that back into line with what we're expecting. The many things out through it, and I'm not going to touch on them all, Blair, because you've covered them really, really well, and I dare say other members is going to pick up in quite a lot of the things. As we went forward with this review at the back of the budget in 2022, we know what it was all about. It was about looking at the brown bins and the recharging structure and how we would deliver recycling going forward. The paper sits content with me. I am content with most of the recommendations that given that we know that the brown bin, and if I can go back just to what I'd said 2 minutes ago about delivery of statutory services, where this is a non-statutory services, and there is a charge for that. I am content with the charge that sits with the brown bin. I am content, and the only thing that's missing, although you're going to follow that median charge, is the implementation of a median charge. If we agree that today, where I would move for one variation in the recommendations, and it would be in the bulky uplift. I would propose that the bulky uplift be reduced by £5 to that £34.80. And also I'd like you to extend the 5 items to 7 items. That would be where cost implications would coming in. Going back to discussions in 2022 and about access to recycling centres. I've had the experience myself just last year where I had to phone in to get permission, where there was a house was vacated through the death of the dad. The siblings had to come up to England to empty that house, and I had to get special permission for them to be able to do that in one day so they could go back home. So what I'm looking for is where circumstances like that prevail, then we look at more than one visit per day, a household to a recycling centre. I'll finish with that just now, Blair, but again, commend and thank you and the team, the full team, for everything and the work that has been overseen and delivered to bring this paper to Council today. Thank you.
Okay, Leader.
Thanks. I'd be absolutely happy to second what Jim was proposing there. Just like to thank the team for the Blairness team for the work, and this has been for quite a number of people around the table, and it's come up with some good proposals, including, could I say, to widen out the ability to recycle to flats. That for me, represent a town centre where there's a number of flats and a number of people couldn't participate within the scheme. It's good to see that being widened out. Can I say, in terms of the bulky uplift, in terms of Jim's proposal, I think that's a great way ahead, just to maybe tackle some of the issues of fly tipping, giving people less excuse for. It's not really an excuse. There's no excuse for fly tipping, but I think hopefully that will maybe make it more affordable. And I think the idea of 7 items looks that neighbours can cooperate. One neighbour can put out 3 items, other one can put out 4, and because the truck's going to be there anyway, so it's helping neighbours to kind of work together. Maybe where they've got 1 or 2 items that they want to do themselves, so it helps that in terms of cooperation. But I think in terms of the challenging financial situation that we've got in front of us, this is a way forward, and I think it's absolute. The vision that from our officers in particular in purchasing Garlaff and Southhook, saving us £6 million and £1.7 million recurring. I mean, that is amazing, a good bit of business, and that's what we mean about thinking a wee bit outside the box, and that's certainly delivering for our people. And I'd just be happy to second Jim.
Thank you, Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Provost. It's a good report. I don't see nothing in it for the constituents. Where do we approach to see what they thought of the buckets. Where do they keep them? I stay in a scheme with blocks of 4. You're not going to get out and in the door, because a lot of the folk just sit their buckets at the front door and leave them in the back front door till the next bucket comes in. So there's no consideration been taken that I see. I might be wrong.
Through you, Provost. Thank you, Councillor Crawford. Indeed, there has been no consultation in terms of the paper. This was remitted to officers to go and carry out a robust and thorough analysis. But what we did, resident experience did sit up front and centre, and I referenced it as part of my presentation and report about the impact and acknowledging that we're looking effectively to go to a 4-bin system, 5 if you have a garden waste permit as well. So what we were able to do is we were able to look at what the footprint has been of our previous bin systems, and actually the impact of the recommendations that I put before you are actually fairly de minimis in terms of size. So what I would be able to tell you is that the footprint proposed is against the current is only 0.75 of a metre squared bigger in terms of a footprint, in terms of where people live. But notwithstanding that, Councillor Crawford, what we have built in is our flexibility within the rollout of our scheme, whereby if in neighbouring properties people wanted to share bins, didn't require a 240 litre bin, they only required a 140 litre bin. All of these options will be available to our residents to ensure that it sits and fits with the community and the amount of waste that they're producing. It's the best available options that we can provide in terms of consistency and efficiency approach across our future collections.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cogley.
Thank you, and Blair, thank you very much for the report. There are a few areas that I would like to raise. First of all, POPs, and relating to that, the bulky uplifts, HR matters, and access to the recycling centre. So first of all, in relation to POPs and bulky uplifts, I think that there's something missing as far as the legislation is concerned. And I think that we need more legislative support in terms of how items are actually dealt with throughout their life. So, for example, if we purchase a car, when we buy a car, the cost of the disposal of the car should be paid for at the time of purchase. And that should be the same for every single item that we purchase. So when we buy a sofa and it contains all sorts of chemicals and cushions and whatever it is, the cost of disposing of that sofa should be paid for at the time that we pay for it. And therefore, we as a council wouldn't be hit by the cost of, for example, dealing with these POPs, chemicals, and similarly with the bulky uplifts, the costs of disposing of that bulky, of that particular item is falling on us as a council. That cost should be paid for by the user at the time that they purchase it. And I think that we should be asking the government, whether this is the Scottish Government and or Westminster Government, to support all local authorities in respect of this. And in terms of achieving our carbon zero targets, I think it's a fundamental piece of legislation that we should be asking for. So that's my first point. My second point is access to recycling centres. I think there should be greater access. And I think that would reduce the amount of fly tipping that we see throughout the authority. So that's something I would like to register. And as far as the HR matters are concerned, the cost of agency staff and the cost of absence is unsustainable. It's an HR model that is unsustainable. Now, I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that we discuss that here today, because I know that will be part of the papers that are coming in front of Cabinet and GNS next week. East Ayrshire performs. But to me, the cost of absence and the cost of agency staff is just simply unsustainable. If we were a private organisation trying to put forward a business model that had those sorts of costs inherently built into it, it would be a non-starter. And I think that we need to be cognizant of that. But I'm suggesting we park that for today and take that forward in our debate next week. So thank you. Those are the items I wish to raise. Thank you.
Through you, Provost, and thank you, Councillor Cogley. As officers, we would certainly be in agreement that producer should pay in terms of materials containing POPs, and I would maybe Provost refer that back in terms of how Council would decide and how they take that forward politically. So we would certainly support that. I note your position on absence, and I note that you'll carry that forward. The access to recycling centres is the same point in which Councillor McMahon had referenced earlier. And you might have seen Malcolm and I just having a very quick conversation there. So we believe we're in a position now, given the establishment of our booking system, that we would be allowed to facilitate, in circumstances, additional visits to our site on the same day. We will need some time as a service to implement what that would look like, and maybe in the initial stages, that would look like you would continue to book your first appointment online. And if you were requiring a second appointment on the same day initially, that would be by a phone call to the service. What I would say and would say to members is that this will not allow additional spaces within access to those sites, because those numbers that we've set out are there because it helps protect the health and safety and all of the movements of that you would expect within a waste transfer station. So I would not compromise the safety over additional numbers. The numbers would stay the same, but it would allow more than one visit on the same day. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mackay.
Thank you very much, Provost. So if I could start off, first of all, for commending Blair having sourced the additional funds and therefore being in a position to bring forward as comprehensive a review for us as we actually have here. Again, I think, as has already been stated, I would certainly agree. In my 20 years plus, I have never seen a review come forward that has been as thorough and as detailed. You promised us that you would look at every aspect of the service. You certainly have delivered on every aspect of the service. I think it's actually incredibly helpful for us. I know we have begun to start talking about the cost of absence. That has been led by the Chief Executive, giving us an overall figure. I think that's incredibly helpful. And again, I think at the round table event, what we saw was that actually our community planning partners also heard that and saw that very much as something that they are aware that they're clearly not capturing at this moment in time. And I suspect have now gone back to actually start capturing that, to actually look at it. It is very important. We need to understand the detail and the frameworks in which we actually operate. I think, again, the definition and classification that you have given us within the body of the report in relation to POPs is very, very helpful, because so many times we have heard we can't recycle because, but again, it's incredibly helpful that we have actually got a definition. And I think that that will actually go down very well with the general public, who really do want to see that they have no longer an interest in some goods, but what their choice would be that these are materials and goods that can actually be utilised by other people. The definition that you've given us allows us to do that. Again, we know the considerable lead-in time that there is to make these changes. So again, I think taking account of what you've presented for us in terms of the HR issues, with against that lead-in time in terms of natural wastage, I think is genuinely helpful. I think also being very, very detailed and clear about what this transformation takes place of and what the resources that you will need in the short term is, again, shows the depth in which and the detail in which this has all been looked at. So that's certainly something. Again, I think being absolutely agile when the opportunity for Garlath came up, and taking the opportunity to take that and make changes to what our proposals had been within Cumnock itself, I think is a very positive thing, and again shows that we are actually not a business that gets stuck in the mud. We actually are able to move forward and look at that. I too, like my colleague, have got concerns and have already expressed concerns about the actual storage in relation to the bins. I have personally been reassured, and I will now say I will please ask for the 140 bin options, and sort of can give you the right address and postcode, and I'm having some building in terms of new bin storage constructed with that in mind at this opportunity. And I would suggest to anybody else who is thinking ahead what's happening within the next 2-year period, go forward with that. I think the cost that you have presented for us in terms of replacement bins, and also if people, and again, I could be in that situation where I just have not thought well enough the night before and I've missed the opportunity, perhaps by oversleeping, to get my bin out. I think it's a completely reasonable thing. If I have failed and I want a service that is over and above the service that has already been costed and paid for, allocated to my property, to be charged for that because it's failure on my part, again, I have no difficulty with that. I do look to the brown bins. It has been something, this is not new, me raising the topic of brown bins. I think we are now into my second decade of talking about brown bins, whether we were charging them or what the actual uplift service was for the brown bins associated with that. So I cannot support what the proposal is associated with that. I do note that we have got some information within the paper itself. It is for 16 local authorities. We are a nation of 32 local authorities, which means that we are not all charging for what is classed as a non-statutory service. So that's not something that I could support. Again, I think the proposals to increase from 5 to 7 uplifts for neighbours to actually cooperate and work together is something that's a positive, and also to look at that reduction in charge is certainly not something that I would dispute. I do have a very specific question, Blair, for us, and that is in relation to the issue of fly tipping. Now, this is probably figures that you don't have, but I think it would be useful for us to have and to put out in terms of the public domain. Since we have seen the introduction of charges for bulky uplifts, what has been the corresponding costs for us in terms of actually having to deal with what I suspect has been an increase in fly tipping? So I think it's important for us to have those figures. So that's me, I think.
Thank you, Provost, and thank you, Councillor Mackay. In terms of the 16 local authorities that are set out within the paper, in terms of brown bin charges, those indeed are local authorities which operate the same collection model as us. There are local authorities that commingle garden waste and food. So what I sought to represent within the paper is almost a like for like in terms of the collection, where there are variances, of course, in terms of how often they are collected. So that would be the 16. So there are more than 16 out of the 32 local authorities that have a brown bin charge. In terms of the fly tipping, it's really challenging to be able to pin down. I would love to have done it as part of this review. It is multifaceted in terms of where some of those costs lie. It's across council. I will go away and have a look again, but I would be setting some expectations about we tried to look at it service specific and we were unable to do that. There are other services such as ARA, environmental health, that may also have subsequent costs in terms of the whole operation of the responding to fly tipping. But I'll go away and look at it and see as much as I can provide to members. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Boyd.
Thanks, Provost. Just start off thanking Blair and his team for all the hard work in the report as well. And also Blair making himself really available for members to meet him and discuss aspects of the paper a good few times, and the last opportunity was a few days ago. So that's great. One point I'd like to note is the replacement containers at present is quite incredible, 304,000 per annum for the trolley system. So it's good we'll be getting rid of that cost there. The trolley system's pretty disastrous now, bits falling to bits. You drive a bit, there's trolleys have got bits missing everywhere, etc. So that'll be good. And it'll also reduce plastic spills, you know, because we've got big litter problems, as we know. So reducing the plastic spills will be a benefit as well. It'll follow in for that with the new system. Staff absence has been covered. I've got concerns about that as well. The number of days is incredible. We can't continue. But again, as Councillor Cogley said, that's for another day. Councillor Crawford's point as well with the number of bins. Again, I brought that up in my chats with Blair. I've got wee concerns with that, you know, and I think I've mentioned it before. Flat areas, and there's quite a number of houses in the bottom end of New Farm with no access to the back garden. So there's going to be a lot of bins in the front garden. We might get a wee bit of grief over that, but Blair's cannot, you know, reassure me with the size. But, you know, and I get the cost. I would have liked the glass to put in with the plastics, but Blair's highlighted that by a greater cost, so I get that, you know, it's what we can do here. And my last point is kind of been mentioned a wee bit, fly tipping. You know, I think a lot of the fly tipping we see, in particular in the countryside, it seems to be coming from household getting rid of waste. You're maybe doing up a kitchen or a bathroom, and there's maybe unscrupulous companies that are taking that waste for a charge, and rather than paying for commercial waste at my facilities, is just dumping it in the countryside. And I know it's not in my ward, but there's a walk you go in the back road to Galston near Gruger, and that's had horrendous fly tipping recently. And I think asbestos was found, as asbestos shooting for a roof, you know, that, and I think that's been highlighted to the council. So where fly tipping is a problem, as I say, in country areas especially, so we can look at that. But overall, I pretty much are very supportive of the paper. Thanks again.
Thank you very much. Councillor Adams.
Thanks, Provost. Blair, thanks very much. As everyone says, it's a very comprehensive document, so thanks very much to you and indeed your team for putting it together. Many of the points I had illustrated have been covered, so I'll skip through them really. Fundamentally, I'm still against the booking. It was a COVID measure that we undertook, and when I go to the dump, while it's commendable we've got a booking system, there must be a cost to charge attached to that booking. And to monitor it. That's something I think we could look at doing, even if it was a Monday to Friday thing where you didn't have to book. Again, like Councillor Crawford, I was concerned about the lack of public consultation with this. When it is such a comprehensive document, it's the one thing that stands out. I'm encouraged by the ability to undertake multiple visits, so thanks to Councillor McMahon for raising that. People with large gardens who choose not to pay the fees involves sometimes 2 or 3 trips to the dump, which you have to do over a number of days. So if that's going to get addressed, then that's good news. Like Councillor Boyd, the cost of absence and the bank holiday charge that we incur, that's eye-watering to say the least. 2 things that really haven't been highlighted. The first thing is the pay gap. There seems to be a significant pay gap that is acknowledged within the paper. And in terms of holding on to staff, retaining staff, I always believe if you can do that, you're saving yourself money. If you've got a good local employee you can hold on to, we need to address that. And again, it's enforcement. I think it would be good for us to highlight, not to name and shame, but to highlight how many people have been booked or prosecuted for fly tipping. If the numbers were large, I'm fairly sure it would decrease the amount of people thinking about fly tipping. Thank you.
Through you, Provost. Thank you, Councillor Adams. In your particular point about the booking system at our household waste recycling centres, as they were actually identified as a service improvement as part of our 2020 review, which actually predated COVID. So those were brought in terms of service improvements and to improve the health and safety on those sites that we operated at that time. What we have seen is we do get quite a lot of feedback about the booking system, but by and large that feedback's really positive about people having access to the site, notwithstanding the access for more than one time in a day. And what I would just, in terms of an observation and reflection, would be that what we see is most other local authorities are either have introduced or are introducing a booking system for their household waste recycling centres. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Watts.
Thank you, Provost. Blair, thank you very much indeed for this extremely comprehensive report. I know that over the last few months or so, the meetings that we've had going through this within groups and obviously the council meetings, etc. I'm also extremely pleased to see that the 50% discount is there for people on universal credit. At a time of such a cost of living crisis, that really will help. Like Councillor Mackay, I still have a great deal of concern over the garden waste permit. I still strongly believe that that should be abolished. I think we should get rid of the permit system for garden waste, and that should go back under one umbrella. That's my only real point. The rest of it I do fully support in this report. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson.
Thanks, Provost. It's just following on from Councillor Mackay and Councillor Adams on the fly tipping issue. Like Maureen, I'd be really interested in seeing those figures, Blair, if you can get them, about the correlation between introducing fees for the bulky uplifts and if that then increased any fly tipping. But at the same time you're looking into that, there is some good stuff going on. You're probably aware that we're piloting certain hotspots just now with CCTV. Now I know because I've been monitoring that myself. I've been driving by these hotspots at least once a week. And I know that since we've put CCTV in at these hotspots and we've put signages up with a wee picture of a camera and basically telling punters that their own candid camera, that these hotspots, the fly tipping has stopped. So what I'd be interested in seeing as well is at the hotspots where we've introduced CCTV, since we introduced CCTV, how much have we saved in having to send teams of guys out there to pick up fly-tipped rubbish? Because I think the cameras, I know the cameras are expensive, Blair, but I actually have a hunch that the cameras are going along, well, installation of cameras at hotspots is going a long way toward maybe paying for itself, because it can't be cheap to continually send out teams of men to pick up fly-tipped rubbish. So I'd be interested in, following on from what Maureen said, I'd be interested in adding that wee bit on. Are the cameras cost effective? How much are they saving us? I was going to go somewhere else with this. Yeah, fly tipping. I mean, I've become quite interested in this in the last year or so. It is the bane of my life, and it's unbelievable. I picked up a case last night. I don't know if anybody can see that, but that is a fly-tipped bin from a private contractor who basically deals in food waste. The bin, you can feel it by weight. That bin's absolutely stacked full. I'm hoping just with food waste. The person that reported it said to me that there might be a body in there. I don't think so. But that is obviously probably been a retailer that had a contract with that contractor. Maybe the contract came to an end, but the bin was full. So somebody somewhere has decided to drive that full bin of hopefully food waste to a piece of council ground and just dump the full bin. So it's absolutely amazing what's getting fly tipped out there. But fly tipping as an elected member is one of the banes of our lives, and I'd be really interested in seeing if the CCTV cameras are cost effective, and my hunch is that they're going a long way to pay for themselves. So that was my point.
Thank you, Provost, through you, and thanks, Councillor Richardson. I have to probably maybe temper some expectations over my ability to produce the level of information that you require. Quite often when our operational staff are out carrying out a function, they are not carrying out that function in isolation. Therefore, to be able to, when it comes back in over my weighbridge without trying to get too operational, etc., we do not record at that level because quite simply it would be an industry in terms of trying to capture it all. I will go away and have a good look at it as it is the will of members, but I have to just set some expectations about my ability to provide as advanced information as you're requesting at that level. In terms of CCTV, again, it may prove problematic, but I would support the view that in those hotspot areas, CCTV recently has had a positive impact. Thank you.
Provost, I don't really want to contribute to a situation where we spend more time focusing on fly tipping than the actual content of Blair's extensive report, but I would agree with Blair. I think members just need to understand that if somebody fly tips, then our response will be we receive the complaint, environmental health will go out and investigate. If they can find any evidence there as to where the source is, they will follow up with the source. They will either seek to have them remove it or we will seek to remove it and recover the cost. We can record and do record the numbers of fly tipping reports, so we can certainly have a comparative figure for before any changes were made either at Western Road or with cameras and afterwards. But as with Blair, our service don't just go out and deal with fly tipping. It will be the corporate enforcement unit or the pollution control team. They'll be out doing other duties. It's just part of what they respond to. There isn't a means to quantify the cost of specifically responding to the fly tipping. It's the same in Blair's service. It's the outdoor amenities folk that go out and empty the bins in the parks that will also go and pick up fly tipping, and that's done on a responsive ad hoc basis. Where fly tipping occurs, if there's no one else to be made to clear it up, then we will go out as the authority of default and we'll clear it up. Again, how long that takes will depend on exactly what has been deposited, how much and what types of waste, and I'm concerned to hear about the asbestos. So I think the focus would be certainly what we can produce, which would be comparative figures on reports of fly tipping incidents and obviously information round about where these are being, reported as having occurred. So location and numbers. I think the ability to actually quantify staff costs in environmental health or waste management or ARA, because it can be in laybys and then it brings in an ARA, is going to be difficult because we don't actually have the facility to quantify the costs in that way. We could maybe come to a figure of what does it take, a notional figure of what does it take to respond to the average fly tipping incident, but as you've just heard, no two are the same, and I'm not sure what average would look like. So I think probably the focus would be better on numbers of incidents, and let's just hope that any evidential trail that might have led to any criminal proceedings in the one you've just alluded to, Councillor Richardson, hasn't been contaminated itself, but we'll pick that up and hopefully nobody could see the pictures. So if colleagues aren't aware of that one in the CEU, we'll get the details of that off you immediately after the meeting and we'll follow that one up.
It's all right, Dave. I reported it through the new portal, so it'll come in as if it was reported by a member of the public. So I used the new portal, mate. It's nice and easy.
That's great. Thanks, folks. Just my understanding with the reason we had to introduce the booking system, there was a lot of shysters with commercial waste appearing on a Saturday and a Sunday in white van, and they were collecting all this rubbish through the week, doing their work, and they weren't buying a commercial licence. So that's why that was introduced, as well as asbestos getting dumped as well. And the other one about fly tipping, we need to be careful because I absolutely accept what Blair's saying, because you're getting incomers coming into East Ayrshire. So you can't, these are companies, there might be those folk that say, we'll take your waste away for 40 quid. And they come into East Ayrshire, they're not from East Ayrshire. So it's difficult to get that balance between what is the outcome of introducing charges for bulky uplifts and how it correlates with fly tipping. So it's difficult to get those. So Councillor Mabin, Peter Mabin.
Thank you, Provost. A couple of different things on health and safety, on climate change, net zero, and on social media, all linked to this. Firstly, I'd like to thank Blair for a very full, comprehensive report, and also thank Malcolm Ray and his team at Cleaner Communities for the amount of work they've put into this and getting this review to us. Also, the pneumonia people Did I say that right?
You know me.
You know me, right? Sorry, the experts. So thanks for their contribution as well. On health and safety and absence, if we're going to this model and it passes through today, it's going to be an improvement on health and safety as far as our operators lifting boxes, carrying weight, twisting and emptying them. That will no longer be the case. So hopefully there will be a reduction in musculoskeletal problems, which would reduce absence a wee bit. On climate change, net zero, I noticed on page 75, paragraph 81, there's a table there and it's showing a carbon tonnage saving it. We're minus 405 on the carbon tonnage, so that's a saving. That's a good step forward on climate change. However, there's a tiny step backwards. We could have been even a wee bit better, and that's page 68, looking at paragraph 50, where we're looking at HVO prices for the fleet have went up, and we're now going back to diesel. I would ask if HVO prices fall again, do we then start buying the HVO and switch from diesel back to HVO, or would that not be possible for technical reasons? I'm not sure, or for storage reasons. I would also look forward to future reports looking at the fleet if we switch to a hydrogen fleet, hydrogen powered or electric vehicle fleet to step away from diesel totally at some point. I realise that's probably years down the line, but I look forward to it anyway. On the social media side, I think that our communications people could help us a lot on social media here with regard to fly tipping. We need to campaign on this. We need to think how easy it is to register an account with our East Ayrshire account, and how easy it is then to book. Well, if you're in Kilmarnock, you'll be booking at Western Road. How easy it is to book for a Cowp run, I call it. The booking system is simple and it's free to all residents. And if we can push that and also add in the number of reported fly tipping incidents, the average cost of a fly tipping incident, and how it's hitting us financially, and how much residents could be saving us if they will simply register an account and use the booking system and do their Cowp run for free. Thank you.
Through you, Provost. Thank you, Councillor Maben. In terms of HVO, essentially my message would be is we will keep it under review. If the prices of HVO significantly reduce or are cheaper than diesel, given that this is all about ensuring good financial sustainability for the service and the council, we would definitely be minded to look at it. So it is one that we would acknowledge that we need to keep under review. Again, just the detail is that the market for HVO is so volatile that it changes month on month. So we would just need to be careful in terms of when we make a decision in terms of switching what fuel type we use, but absolutely keep it on board. In terms of electric and hydrogen fleet, again, that would be an aspiration for us in the future. We looked at it as part of our review, and the technology is just not there in terms of the size and weight of vehicles. So that is one, again, for a future review, that the technology may have advanced far enough that would allow that change to be made. And again, I couldn't agree more throughout this report, and indeed Councillor Mackay referenced to it as well. This is like a 2-year rollout of a significant change, and our comms have to be very, very good at an East Ayrshire level, at a local level, and I would give all members in the chamber a commitment that we will work our hardest to get that right. Thank you.
Councillor
Thank you.
Mackay.
Sorry. Just the health and safety, the musculoskeletal, hopefully that's going to be good for absence levels. Sorry.
Sorry, through you again, Provost. Thanks, Councillor Maben. So indeed, musculoskeletal is not the highest reason for absence within the service, but it is one of the highest ranked levels. But undoubtedly, for all of the reasons you set out, we would anticipate that we would see less injuries at work or accidents because of the new model. Thank you.
Provost, so it is just to say that I would like to move the recommendation as set out with the change at item 11, which is reject the adjustment of the garden waste payment scheme charge. And then I think I'm correct in saying that it is at 12 and 13 to accept Councillor McMahon's, Councillor McMahon's changes in terms of the costs and the changes from 5 to 7. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that. I can ask Councillor Watts, you were asking about a change that you didn't want a payment either. Now, this is where we need to get, I'm not sure, Councillor Mackay, were you keeping the charge at 30? Was that your proposal?
Keeping the charge at 30. Yes.
You're keeping the charge at 30. You wanted to remove it altogether.
Obviously, my preference would be to remove it altogether. My preference would be to remove it altogether. However, I am happy to go with Councillor Mackay's amendment at this time.
Thanks, Provost. You've clarified matters. So I think it would be appropriate if members are willing to agree a short recess, because there will be financial implications on the impact of what has been proposed as an amendment by Councillor McMahon in relation to the bulky uplift charge. And I think it's appropriate officers just have a small amount of time to cost that. There would also be a financial implication from holding the brown bin charge at its current level and not applying the median, as has been moved as an amendment by Councillor Mackay. I note the position with Councillor Watts that he's not moving as an amendment that would remove the charge, so that flies off. But I think it'd be appropriate just to allow colleagues the opportunity to go and look at that. I think the information's to hand, we're not talking about others, but if members would just allow a short adjournment, Provost, through you with your agreement, to allow those costs to be brought back and the financial implications of the amendments be shared with Council before the matter just be then determined. I think that's an appropriate way to proceed.
Oh, thanks, David. Councillor Cogley, has information?
Yeah, thank you. And I raised a political issue as well in terms of producer pays, and I'm quite keen that we pursue that. Thank you.
Yep, happy to have that adopted into the, yep, happy with that. Okay, folks, understand.
So that would be through you, Provost, an additional recommendation that a letter go from the leader, I presume, on behalf of the council, simply setting out the council's ask that the legislator look at the legislation and embedding the polluter pay principle further and trying to build it into the early life of the material. So that's supported by everyone, and that'll be an additional recommendation, and officers will work in that.
Councillor McMahon.
Thanks, Prof. Just one more comment just before we go. Just to remember that the brown bin is an opt-in, opt-out service. You can, it's your own discretion. There is alternative ways to get rid of your garden waste. It's already been established this morning that you can make additional journeys to Western Road or Garlath, and finally that the composters are still available.
Well, that's, folks, I was going to suggest, well, 35, say about give officers time and give folk time for a wee break. Come back here for 1 o'clock. Is that enough time? 1:10.
The ICC this afternoon.
The ICC this afternoon. Well, we'll make it 1 o'clock, folks. 1 o'clock back here. Thanks.